By day's end, please clear your desk. Holly, Human Resources will manage your exit paperwork. The words on my computer screen blurred as I reread them. 5 years of loyal service to Summit Edge Logistics and a cold, impersonal email was all I received. 3 days, that was all the time I'd taken to lay my father to rest. 3 days of approved bereavement leave. We need employees who prioritize their work, the email continued, as if attending my father's funeral was some optional social event I'd chosen over submitting quarterly reports. I leaned back in my chair, the leather squeaking in the quiet of the early morning. The Boise office remained largely empty, the sky outside just beginning to glow with the dawn. I had arrived early, eager to catch up on tasks after my brief absence. Harley Peterson is my name, and until roughly 2 minutes ago, I served as the regional team lead for Summit Edge Logistics, top-performing division. At 34, I had not only forged a career, but also built a team that felt like family. We celebrated birthdays, supported one another through tough times, and pushed each other to excel professionally. My workspace surrounded with a small cactus my team had given me last Christmas. The framed photo of us all at the company retreat. The handwritten thank you notes from team members I'd mentored. 5 years of my life condensed into a few personal items that would fit into a cardboard box. Dawn Weaver, my direct supervisor, who had personally approved my bereavement leave just last week, had signed the termination notice attached to the email. It stated, "Failure to maintain adequate presence during critical operational periods." My father's death, it seemed, fell within one of these ill-defined critical periods. I didn't weep. I didn't pound my fist on the desk or storm into Dan's office demanding an explanation. Instead, I pulled out my phone, photographed the email, and then forwarded it to my personal account. Then I shut down my computer, stood, and began to pack my belongings methodically. By the time other employees started to trickle in, my desk was already out. Tanya from accounting was the first to notice. "Holly, what's happening?" she asked, her eyes widening at the sight of my box. "I've been let go," I replied simply. "What? Why?" Apparently, taking approved bereavement leave to bury my father didn't demonstrate proper work priority. Tanya's face shifted from confusion to outrage. "That's not right. Have you spoken to Paula? The regional manager should know about this." "No," I said, carefully wrapping my cactus in newspaper. "I won't fight it, but I won't forget it either." When you work closely with people for years, you learn to read their expressions. As I continued packing, more of my team members arrived. Jason, one of my direct reports, was the first to hear the news, his usual cheerful grin instantly vanishing. "This is bull," he started, but I cut him off with a slight shake of my head. "It's done, Jason." Don made his decision. "But we just wrapped up the Newbrook merger last month. Profits are up 18% this quarter because of your planning." I smiled sadly. Apparently, that wasn't enough. By 9:30, all 7 of my core team members had gathered around my desk in silent solidarity. Ethan, our logistics specialist, who rarely showed emotion, looked like he might punch a wall. Veronica, our client relations manager, openly wept. Behind them stood Michael, Louise, Diane, Gabriella, and Kayla, each with expressions ranging from disbelief to fury. "You can't leave," Veronica insisted. "The Wilson account renewal is next week. The Hernandez shipping contract is in negotiations. None of us knows the system like you do. I finished taping up my box. Dan should have considered that before he fired me for attending my father's funeral. The weight of my words hung in the air. My father, gone just a week ago. The funeral soil still fresh. And now this betrayal from a company into which I had poured my soul. I need everyone back at their desks. A sharp voice came from behind us. Don Weaver stood there, arms crossed, his thin face set in a disapproving frown. We have deadlines to meet. No one moved. Now, he added, his voice rising slightly. After a long moment, my team dispersed, each giving me a meaningful look as they returned to their workstations. Don approached me, lowering his voice. This could have been handled with more discretion if you'd waited until the end of the day to pack up. I met his gaze steadily, like the discretion you showed in firing me via email after approving my bereavement leave. His jaw tightened. Business needs change rapidly. Summit Edge requires people who understand that priorities shift. Your father's passing was unfortunate, but don't, I warned, my voice deadly quiet. Don't finish that sentence, Don. For a moment, something like uncertainty flickered across his face. Then he straightened, adjusting his tie. Human Resources is expecting you. Please don't make this more difficult than it needs to be. I picked up my box. Don't worry, I won't make a scene. But remember this moment, Dan. You might find it important later. The Human Resources office was clinical, white walls minimal, decoration, and Barbara Kent's sympathetic yet practiced expression. She was new to the company, having joined just 6 months prior, and I could see her discomfort with the situation. I'm sorry about this, Harley, she said, sliding separation papers across her desk. And I'm very sorry about your father. Thank you, I replied, scanning the documents. Standard severance, 2 weeks' pay, a non-disparagement clause, and a reminder of my non-compete agreement, which barred me from working for direct competitors. For 6 months? Is there anything I should know about why this happened? Barbara asked cautiously. This seems abrupt. I debated how much to share, then decided on the truth. I pulled out my phone and showed her the email. 3 days of approved bereavement leave, and I'm fired for not prioritizing work. Barbara's professional demeanor slipped, her eyes widening. This is the actual termination notice. Just an email, no performance improvement plan, no documented warnings, nothing. She frowned, making a note on her legal pad. I need to verify some things with the legal department. Would you excuse me for a moment? While Barbara stepped out, I gazed through the window. From this floor, I could see the Boise River winding through the city. My father had loved fishing that river. He taught me patience there, standing in waders as the current rushed past our knees. The river moves, holigo, he'd say, but the rocks stay steady. Be like the rocks. Barbara returned 20 minutes later, her expression carefully neutral, but her tight smile told me everything. Nothing would change. Unfortunately, Idaho is an at-will employment state, she began. The company is within its rights too, I understand, I interrupted. Signing the documents without further argument, Summit Edge can do whatever it wants. Just like I can. She hesitated, then lowered her voice. Off the record, this isn't, right? If you wanted to pursue action, I don't, I said firmly. But thank you. As I walked through the main office towards the exit, I felt eyes following me. My team watched silently, their faces somber. I gave them a small smile, my last act as their leader. Outside, the September air was surprisingly warm. I placed my box in the trunk of my car and sat in the driver's seat, allowing myself a moment to process everything. My phone chimed with a text message, then another and another. Jason, this is wrong. What can we do? Veronica, are you okay? Can we meet up later? Ethan, Dan's a spineless jerk. The team is furious. More messages poured in, expressions of outrage, support, loyalty. These people weren't just colleagues. They were my professional family. I started my car, a plan already forming in my mind. I wouldn't fight Summit Edge directly. I wouldn't sue, though I likely had grounds. No, I would be strategic, patient, just as my father had taught me. The rocks stay steady while the river rushes past. My phone rang. It was Hank Fleming, CEO of Vertex Transport Systems, Summit Edge's biggest competitor. We'd met at an industry conference last year and had kept in touch. He'd been trying to recruit me for months. It was time to return his call. A new opportunity arises. The Vertex Transport Systems office was everything Summit Edge wasn't. Open concept, collaborative workspaces, and large windows framing the Boise skyline. Hank Fleming, a burly man with a silver beard and keen eyes, greeted me with a firm handshake. "I've been hoping you'd call," he said, leading me to a conference room. Though I admit I didn't expect it would be under these circumstances. Word traveled fast in our industry. Hank already knew about my termination, though not the specific details. I filled him in as we sat down, showing him Dan's email. "That's not just bad management," Hank said, frowning. "That's inhumane. Bereavementleave exists for a reason. Summit Edge has always valued profits over people," I replied. "I just never thought I'd be on the receiving end." Hank leaned forward. "I'll be blunt. Holly, I want you on my team. Vertex is expanding our Pacific Northwest operations, and we need someone with your expertise. The division director position is yours if you want it." My heart skipped a beat. Division director, a significant step up from my role at Summit Edge. More responsibility, more authority, better pay. "What about my non-compete?" I asked. Hank smiled. "Our legal team has reviewed it. It's overly broad and likely uninformed. Plus, we'd cover any legal expenses if Summit Edge tried to enforce it." "I'd need to think about it," I said carefully. "Of course," Hank replied. "Take the weekend. We can discuss specifics on Monday." The team's solidarity that evening. I met Veronica and Jason at Riverfront Brewing, a small pub away from downtown where we wouldn't likely run into other Summit Edge employees. They arrived together, their expressions a mix of anger and concern. "How are you holding up?" Veronica asked, sliding into the booth. "I'm all right," I assured them. "It's been a challenging couple of weeks, but I'll land on my feet." Jason snorted. "Dan's a fool. The office is already in chaos. Nobody knows where the Henderson proposal files are stored, and the system access you had hasn't been transferred to anyone else." "That sounds like a Dan problem," I replied, taking a sip of my water. Veronica leaned forward. "It's more than that. Everyone's talking, not just our team. People are furious about how you were treated." I hadn't expected that. "Really, you were respected," Holly, Jason said, not just by us. The way Dan handled this, people are scared. Now, if they do this to you, their star team lead, what would they do to anyone else? Veronica nodded. Paula has been asking questions. The regional manager looks worried. Good, I said simply. As we talked, more texts arrived from other team members, similar stories of disorganization, frustration, and anger at management. Summit Edge was already feeling my absence. What will you do now? Jason asked. Dada hesitated. I've had an offer from Vertex. Their eyes widened. But your non-compete, those aren't always enforceable, Veronica said quickly. She worked with contracts daily and knew the legalities, especially if they fired you without cause. That's what Vertex's legal team said, but it's still a risk. Jason's phone buzzed. He checked it and frowned. Dan's calling an emergency meeting tomorrow morning. Saturday? He's never done that before. The Wilson account review is due Monday, Veronica explained to me. Nobody can find your analysis files. I smiled slightly. Those files were properly stored on the company's server, but my particular organizational system wasn't immediately obvious to others. I hadn't anticipated this would become an issue, but I couldn't deny feeling a flicker of satisfaction. I should get going, I said, gathering my purse. Early appointment tomorrow. As I stood to leave, Jason caught my eye. Holly, if you did go to Vertex, hypothetically speaking, would they be hiring? I paused, studying their faces. Hypothetically, yes. They're expanding rapidly. The look that passed between Jason and Veronica told me everything. Legal insights and a decision Saturday morning. I met with Vincent Torres, an employment lawyer a friend had recommended. His office was small but elegant, with diplomas from prestigious universities adorning the walls. I explained my situation, showing him the email and termination notice. This is textbook wrongful termination, Vincent said, removing his glasses. Firing someone for taking approved bereavement leave could be argued as both a breach of contract and a violation of good faith. I'm not interested in suing, I clarified. I just want to understand my options regarding my non-compete agreement. Vincent reviewed the document carefully. This is overly restrictive. 6 months prohibition on working for competitors within a 300-mile radius. That's essentially telling you to leave the industry or relocate. Is it enforceable? I asked. In Idaho, it's questionable, especially given the circumstances of your termination. Courts typically won't enforce non-competes when the employer acts in bad faith. He leaned back in his chair. What's your plan, Holly? Vertex Transport Systems has offered me a position, better title, better pay. Vincent nodded. Summit Edge would have to prove that you're causing them actual harm by working there. Given that they terminated you, that's a difficult argument to make. He scribbled some notes. I'd say proceed with caution, but don't let this non-compete prevent you from earning a living. Over the weekend, my phone continued buzzing with messages from my former team. The emergency Saturday meeting had apparently been tense. Dan was pressuring everyone to take on additional responsibilities to cover my absence with no extra compensation. The Wilson account files had been located, but nobody fully understood my analysis methodology. By Sunday evening, I had made my decision. A new chapter begins. Monday morning, I called Hank Fleming, I accept your offer, I told him, but I have one condition. Name it, Hank replied. I want to build my own team. If my former colleagues from Summit Edge apply to Vertex, I want them to receive fair consideration. Absolutely. Hank agreed. If they're half as talented as you, we'd be lucky to have them. That afternoon, I signed my contract with Vertex, Division Director of Pacific Northwest Operations. The salary was 40% higher than what I'd been making at Summit Edge, with better benefits and a signing bonus. As I left Vertex's offices, I checked my phone to find 7 new messages, one from each core member of my former team. They all wanted to meet for coffee privately. Tuesday morning, I sat at a quiet corner table in a small downtown coffee shop, waiting. Jason arrived first, then Veronica. One by one, Ethan, Louise, Diane, Gabriella, and Kayla joined us until we filled 2 tables pulled together. Summit Edge is imploding, Ethan said without preamble. Dan's micromanaging everyone. Paula is breathing down his neck, and clients are asking questions. The Wilson account is threatening to pull out, Veronica added. They wanted to know why you weren't handling their renewal. I sipped my coffee, listening as each shared similar stories of chaos and frustration. We heard you've accepted a position at Vertex, Jason finally said. The others grew quiet, watching me intently. News travels fast, I observed. We want to come with you, Veronica stated firmly. The others nodded in agreement. I studied their faces. You all have good positions at Summit Edge, secure jobs. Are you sure you want to risk that? What security? Luis asked bitterly. If they'd fire you for attending your father's funeral, none of us are safe. Vertex is hiring, I said carefully. I can't promise anything, but I can refer you. Each of you would need to apply formally. We already have, Gabriella revealed, pulling out printed copies of confirmation emails. All 7 of us. Yesterday, I couldn't hide my surprise. You applied before talking to me. We trust you, Holly, Kayla said simply. Where you go, we go. I felt a surge of emotion, gratitude mixed with vindication. Let me make some calls. Summit Edge reaps what it sows. Following Monday, my phone rang at 7:30 a.m. The caller, ID displayed Paula McCormack, Summit Edge's regional manager. Holly, Paula's voice had a forced calmness. We need to talk. Good morning, Paula, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. What can I do for you? I've just received 7 resignation letters, all from your former team, all effective immediately. There was a pause. Care to explain? I took a slow breath. I'm not sure what explanation you're looking for. I don't work for Summit Edge anymore. They're all going to Vertex, where you just started as division director. Her voice hardened. This doesn't look coincidental. People make career choices for various reasons. Paula, perhaps you should ask Don why your top-performing team is leaving en masse. This is about your termination, isn't it? She sounded resigned now. I've reviewed this situation. Don didn't consult me before letting you go. I would never have approved it. That's between you and Dan, I replied, though I'm curious why. Summit Edge's regional manager wasn't involved in terminating a team lead. Paula sighed. Don claimed it was an urgent performance issue that couldn't wait for my return from the Seattle conference. I trusted his judgment. Clearly, that was a mistake. I said nothing, letting the silence grow uncomfortable. Look, Holly, Paula finally continued, I'm prepared to offer you your position back with a 10% raise and a formal apology. We need your expertise. The Wilson account is threatening to walk. I appreciate the offer, Paula, but I've accepted a position elsewhere. We'll match whatever they're paying. プラス15%. It's not about the money. Then what would it take? There was desperation in her voice now. 7 key employees walking out simultaneously is devastating. The operational knowledge alone, it would take time. Travel, I interrupted, going. Back to when my father died and Summit Edge showing basic human decency instead of punishing me for grieving. The line went quiet. I need to go. Paula? I start my new position today, and I don't want to be late. Your non-compete, she began. Feel free to have your legal team contact mine, I replied evenly, though they might want to review the circumstances of my termination first. After hanging up, I drove to Vertex's offices, arriving early to prepare for the day. Hank met me in the lobby, beaming. We're considering all 7 of your former colleagues, he said. Their qualifications are impressive. Interviews start Wednesday. Thank you for giving them a fair chance, I replied. Fair chance. Holly, their top talent. Summit Edge's mistake is our gain. 2 days later, I received another call, this time from Barbara Kent in Human Resources at Summit Edge. I shouldn't be telling you this, she said quietly, but Dawn Weaver has been placed on administrative leave pending review. Paula is launching an investigation into management practices, particularly around bereavement and time-off policies. That's good to hear, I said genuinely. The board of directors is involved now, Barbara continued. Losing an entire specialized team to a competitor has triggered alarm bells. They're reviewing all terminations from the past year. By Friday, all 7 of my former team members had received and accepted offers from We met for dinner to celebrate, raising glasses in a toast to new beginnings, Veronica said. And to Holly, Jason added, who taught us what real leadership looks like. The following week, I received a formal letter from Summit Edge acknowledging my wrongful termination and offering a settlement to avoid litigation. I accepted it not for the money, but for the official admission that they had been wrong. That same day, the Wilson account signed with Vertex, bringing their business to us after learning that their preferred team now worked under my direction. The river had moved, but we had remained steady, like rocks, just as my father had taught me. The sweet taste of success 3 months later. I stood at the front of Vertex's largest conference room, presenting our quarterly results to the executive team. The numbers spoke for themselves. 30% growth in our division. 4 major client acquisitions, 3 of them former Summit Edge. Accounts and operational efficiency improvements that had reduced costs by 22%. Exceptional work, Holly, Hank said when I finished. You and your team have exceeded every projection. I smiled. My team deserves the credit. They've been remarkable. After the meeting, I returned to my office to find my 7 core team members waiting with a cake. What's this for? I asked. It's been exactly 3 months since we all jumped ship together, Jason explained. We're celebrating our Independence Day. I laughed. You're all ridiculous. But happy, Veronica added. Seriously, Holly, everyone's thriving here. It was true. Each team member had grown professionally in their new roles at Vertex. They had more autonomy, better resources, and were finally receiving recognition for their contributions. Most importantly, they were valued as people, not just productivity machines. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Summit Edge. Logistics announces restructuring amid client exodus. I showed it to the group. I heard they lost the Hernandez contract last week, Ethan said, cutting cake slices. That's 20% of their Pacific Northwest revenue. Dan's gone, Luis added. Cleared out his office Friday. Paula is trying to save what's left. But I felt no pleasure in Summit Edge's struggles, only a sense of justice. The company wasn't failing because we had left. It was failing because its leadership had created a culture where employees were disposable, where attending a father's funeral was considered a lack of commitment to Summit Edge. I raised my water glass. May they learn that a company is only as strong as how they treat their people. And to Holly, Gabriella added, who showed us we deserved better. Full circle 6 months after joining Vertex, I received an unexpected lunch invitation from Paula McCormick. She'd left Summit Edge and joined a management consulting firm specializing in organizational culture. We met at a quiet restaurant overlooking the Boise River. Paula looked different, more relaxed, the perpetual stress lines around her eyes soft. Thank you for meeting me, she began. I wanted to apologize properly for what happened. You weren't directly responsible, I reminded her. No, but I created the environment that made it possible, she sighed. After you and your team left, everything unraveled. The board brought in external consultants to evaluate what went wrong. The report wasn't flattering to any of us in leadership. I nodded, waiting for her to continue. Summit Edge is being acquired by Meridian Shipping, Paula revealed, at a fraction of its previous valuation. They're basically buying the client list and physical assets. The news didn't surprise me. Summit Edge had been hemorrhaging clients and talent for months. What about Dan? I asked. Still unemployed, last I heard. His reputation in the industry, double quotes, she trailed off. Let's just say your story has circulated widely. I hadn't spread the details of my termination, but I hadn't hidden them either. When asked why I'd left Summit Edge, I told the simple truth. I've learned a valuable lesson from all this, Paula continued. Now I'm helping other companies avoid the same mistakes. As we finished lunch, Paula asked the question I sensed had been on her mind all along. Was it worth it, walking away quietly instead of fighting? I thought about my team at Vertex. Thriving, motivated, and treated with respect. I thought about the clients who had followed us, who now receive better service. I thought about my father, who had taught me that sometimes the strongest response isn't the loudest. Yes, I replied simply. The results speak for themselves. Legacy and the unstoppable Flowin. Year after that fateful email that had altered the course of my career, Vertex named me Executive Vice President of Operations for the entire Northwest region. My division had become the company's crown jewel, efficient, innovative, and boasting the highest employee satisfaction scores in the organization. Each of my 7 team members had been promoted as well. Jason now led his own division. Veronica Veronica, had transformed our client relations approach and earned industry-wide recognition. The others had similarly distinguished themselves, their talents finally receiving the appreciation they deserved. On the anniversary of my termination from Summit Edge, I received a small package in the mail. Inside was my old cactus plant, now slightly larger but still thriving, with a note from Barbara Kent. Rescued this from your desk. Thought you might want it back. Summit Edge closes for good next week. I placed the cactus on my windowsill where it would get plenty of sunlight. Like me, it had survived being discarded and found a better place to grow. That evening, I drove to the Boise River and stood on the bank where my father and I used to fish. The water flowed steadily around the rocks, just as it always had. I thought about how a single Momenta cold email terminating my employment had ultimately led to greater success and happiness, not just for me, but for everyone who had followed me. You were right, Dad, I whispered to the river. Sometimes you need to stay steady and let the current do its work. As I reflected on my journey from terminated team lead to executive vice president, I realized my revenge hadn't been in destroying Summit Edge. My revenge had been in building something better. A workplace where bereavement leave wasn't viewed as a lack of commitment, where people were valued beyond their productivity metrics, where leadership meant empowering others rather than controlling them. The greatest revenge wasn't in tearing down what had hurt me, but in creating something that made the old system obsolete. My father would have been proud of that,